the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's the Halloween edition of Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan. Ooh. If you've got a tip for Melissa, a spooky ghost story, a creepy tale from the crypt, the name of a bike shop stupid enough to agree to fix a flat tire on Jigsaw's tricycle, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host. Her axe and hockey mask have been safely secured in the dungeon, Melissa Morgan!
More Bella the Cow.
There's the cowbell again.
It's Kristen's fault.
It's whose fault?
Kristen. She's the one that gave it's her fault. You can call her and blame her.
Okay. It's not very Halloween-y, though.
It is if you saw it. It's a very scary unicorn bell.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got scary for you. How's that? That's our Halloween music. You like that?
It's very scary.
Yes.
It's very, very scary for the Halloween edition of Just the Tipsters.
I like it.
It's our first Halloween.
It's our very first Halloween, and I thought that we'd have some scary music.
It's frightening. I'm frightened.
You like it?
No.
I'm gonna keep playing
it's very frightening. Yes. No.
Yeah.
Stop.
No.
It's frightening. Very frightening.
Oh, all right. I'll stop it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
I feel like we would be remiss if we did not notify all of the tipsters of our recent victory. Second year in a row, we received first place prize for and a prize for the couples division of the Halloween costume contest at the Meals on Wheels West Monster Bash, which is their largest fundraiser of the year, and this year was overwhelmingly wonderful. It was a great venue, and probably twice as many people as last year, or maybe it just the venue last year was more spread out and we couldn't see everyone together. It was just a lovely event, and I am horribly competitive and worked hard.
No, you're not horribly competitive. You are cancerously competitive, but we won't get into that.
Thank you. We fucking won, didn't we?
Well, we did.
God damn it.
We did.
If you hang with the winner, you're a winner. So fuck you. So anyway, I would have...
See what I mean, folks?
Oh, fuck off. So I would have done anything to get an opportunity to wear a sloth costume. And there's a hilarious meme that went around that listed the 7 deadly sins, and one of them is sloth. And there was a picture of a little sloth like, really, man? You know, he was sad that it was a beautiful costume, I have to say. Well, no, it was a sloth costume. So Mark was greed, found a wonderful jacket that had gold cuffs and gold lapels, and it looked like it was made out of $100 bills. It's all about the Benjamins, and got some really great play money from the Dollar Tree, and glue sticked it to a bag, so it looked like he had a bag of money, and got him a pimp stick with a $sign, so it looked like he was all pimped out. Anyway, we won, and it was awesome. And it was not a sure thing this year because there was a lot more competition in the couples division.
There were some good costumes.
Well, none as good as ours.
Well,
that's why we won. It was kind of overwhelming.
Here's the deal. She's not. I have to say, my wife, your host, is not. It does not care about the prize, really. It's not about the loot. It's about winning.
Yes!
Because we got, the prize. Look, this is a charity. It was a charity event.
And it's a really nice prize. It's just not one we gave a crap about and we're going to give to someone else.
Right.
It's an event and for 4 people that we were just like, oh, God, no, let's just kill ourselves. So someone will get the benefit of this, gift certificate to a thing we could not care less about.
Yeah.
It wouldn't. I said that it wouldn't matter if it was like a rabbit turd wrapped in newspaper. As long as it said first prize, I'd be like, thank you for my turd. I will take it. And
you would.
I would. I'd be thrilled to death.
And we should point out it's for a good cause.
It's for a great cause.
It's for Meals on Wheels West, which is in Santa Monica, California. I'm on the board. And
he is.
And we raised a lot of money, and it was a very good event.
Yes, it was a beautiful, wonderful event. And this is, quite frankly, my favorite time of year. Not only it fall, which I love with all my heart, and I always have, because I, for the first half of my life lived in a part of the world where there was fall and seasons, to now it's 90 degrees in California or something. But Halloween is my jam, and I have
It's Halloween. You like that?
That's great, producer Mark. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah,
that it's Halloween, and it's my favorite time of year.
It's scary.
Very, very scary. I think you're scarier than the music, but thank you. So I feel like, God places you. Okay, stop now. It's good. Thank you. So God places you someplace where he knows you'll do the most good. And we are in a neighborhood that's just fucking crazy. So when we lived in a rental house for 7 years in the San Fernando Valley, we thought we were the shit, because we were one of the only houses on the block that would decorate, and we got to where we wouldn't just give out like a little candy bar. When I say we, I mean me, made treat bags. So little cellophane treat bags with like a little candy bar and a little Tootsie Pop and a little toy. And I would take a long time to amass these things because it's not, cheap. And I would buy the things that wouldn't go bad, like the toys and the bags, when I could get them on sale. And the Tootsie Pops last like about a year and a half. So I would get them about 6 months before. And the candy I'd buy last minute, the chocolate candy, because you don't want to hand some kid a 2-year-old chocolate bar, and they're like, "Why is it gray?"
Well, some kids maybe.
Well, some kids, you're right, but for the most part, so we would stuff. I remember one year we had about 150 in our rental house, and then by the time we left there, it was like 350, and I thought that was pretty big. I was
350 kids in one night is a lot.
That is a lot. So we moved here. And ironically, moved our escrow closed, and we moved in middle of October. And the first year we were here, the neighbors were like, has anyone warned you about Halloween? I'm like, no, but I'm so excited. Because, we came from a place where we probably gave out like 350 treat bags. And they're like, piker. And I'm like, what? So I stuffed like 350 or 400 and some treat bags and thought that would be good. Oh, no. By 7:30, we were out. And so I ended up just giving out single pieces of candy like, all the other cheap ass fuckers do. So the next year I made like 750 bags. I was like, this is plenty. Oh no, we were out by 8. 1 year Mark went to the store twice during.
Yeah. We after about the third year, we started thinking, let's try to figure out how many kids there are. And we figure out that there are at least between the hours of like 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. in a 2-hour period, we get upwards of 1,200 little fuckers in their costumes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on a weeknight, we can top out at 1,200, 1,300. On a weekend, I think 1 year it was 1,600 to 1,700. And I think I gave up. Like 1 year, I think, and we have help. Sometimes we have our wonderful pet sitter, Lisa, who helps me stuff the bags, because I start typically at the beginning of October and stuff the treat, because it takes a while to stuff, Now we've got a system where it's like one mini chocolate candy bar, one Tootsie Pop, one something we call secondary candy, which is either like a Jolly Rancher or a little bag of Skittles or something, and then a toy. And it takes a while to do that. So Lisa, helps. When she can. She's very busy. And we, 1 year it was 1,650 or 1,700 and they were still coming, and we were just like, I think I drew the line. I was like, fuck this shit.
That's it. We're done.
Yeah.
And I have to say, just so you know, we're not talking about, it's so dramatic that in our neighborhood, Nobody gives candy out from behind their door in their house. Everybody goes out to their driveway and just sets up on the
cul-de-sac. Yeah, you sit at the end of your driveway, because if you sat in your house, you would never sit. There would just be a parade of people.
Your doorbell would break.
Right. So one of our neighbors, intrepid, younger, technologically advanced neighbor, Maggie, and her husband Rob, set up a camera on one of their cars in the driveway on the hood or on the roof of the car. So it was sort of elevated, and did a time-lapse video, which is on YouTube. It's under like Halloween cul-de-sac or cul-de-sac Halloween. She's done it a couple of years, and she condenses 3.5 hours into about 3 minutes and puts music behind it. And you can see they come at, because it's a cul-de-sac, they come at you from both sides. So we have a table we fold out. We have our chairs we sit in, and we have those plastic storage bins filled with, 1,500 or so treat bags. and you have to have help, because if you did it by yourself, you'd end up killing yourself, and you'd have to grow like Shiva arms, like 8 arms. And this year, I should mention to poor Mark, we're going to have to make do with our forearms because Lisa's busy.
No.
I know.
No.
I know. But it's a weeknight. I know.
Now that's scary.
I know. We don't have any.
Scary music. Lisa's not there. I can't believe that.
If you don't stop this.
I can't believe she's not going to be there.
She's very busy and she can't help us. So it's just the two of us. And we're just going to have to plow through it, baby doll. You end up not even, they come at you like zombies. You end up not, seeing.
They do.
You end up just throwing treat bags at people and hope they catch them. And it's like, take your treat bag and go. Please get out of my. I mean, it's overwhelming. And we also try to reward those who spend time making their costume, not buying like a plastic Superman face to put on at Target or something, but do something different, unique. We also give out just little $10 Target gift cards we pick about 6 costumes, and through the night, it's like, if this costume is different, unique, original, you put some thought into it, you get a Target gift card and a treat bag. And we used to do iTunes cards, but a lot of kids were too young.
Well, yeah, and iTunes is so out now. It's so 2011.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm old school. So that's the Halloween update of my favorite time of the year, except that I have more treat bags to stuff. This October has been a bit of let's just call it what it is, a clusterfuck in a great way. We traveled to Chicago. Mark had a conference, and I got to spend some time with the just majestic Laura Frizzo and Jeremy Ogden from the ID Network documentary Dead North. And she is a hero. He is a hero of mine. They're spectacular human beings, and they are going to be on the podcast where we get to interview them. I'm just going to go ahead and say it now instead of just alluding to it because they said they would months ago, but I wanted to meet them in person, and they are just as amazing as you could imagine.
Yeah, I think they wanted to meet us too, which is fair.
Well, yeah, I mean, just talking to us over the phone, interviewing them, I didn't want them to feel like they were going to get caught in a Nancy Grace, gotcha moment or something, because we adore them, and they are magnificent, and they are real heroes, real true crime heroes who would not give up on a missing man in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Chris Reagan. And their teamwork, Chief Frizzo, she was the first female chief of police in the Upper Peninsula. She was the chief of police of Iron City, Michigan, and Detective Ogden, who worked for a department in Indiana. And I'm letting all the cats out of the bag, but it involves a female serial killer, which is fairly rare, and a female serial killer who's, now in her mid-30s, but probably started in her mid-20s, meeting men. She's married, by the way. Meeting men online and calling them her friends, which adds another level to Facebook friend. And they started disappearing, and she probably has a list of upward of 9 victims. So we'll get into that when we get to interview them. But I was looking for the perfect Halloween edition of Just the Tip-Sters, as well as stuffing 1,200 or so treat bags. And this one really stood out because I hate unsolved cases, and yet you want some mystery in your Halloween story. And this one is, let's just call it Mysterioso. And it's fascinating, and I'm going to ask you to just hang on for the ride because it's a roller coaster at Six Flags. It's not Disney. It's 6 motherfucking flags. It's an adult roller coaster that is going to lead you on paths that you're going to be like, what? It's so layered and involves multi-states, New York, North Dakota, California. So we are going on a journey, my beloved tipsters. It's the Halloween murders of Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman.
Hey, I'm just introducing it's scary music.
I'm going to come into your control room with a hammer.
Okay, you're a killjoy.
I am a killjoy, and I'm going to be a kill mark if it doesn't stop. So this is where the music would actually come in handy. This is from a New York Times article, and I just hate the way they all begin. Sometime in the early morning hours of Halloween in 1981, a Manhattan couple, Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman, were murdered in their apartment, and it's located in Greenwich Village. So they were severely beaten, and then they were shot in the head execution style. They were bound, made to get down on their knees, and then shot in the back of the head. Their apartment was ransacked. It was sort of not thought to be a big deal at first because even though it's the murder of 2 people. And Ronald Sisman was 39. His girlfriend, Elizabeth Platzman, was 20, and she was a student, and he was a professional photographer. He had 2 different photography businesses out of his lovely home in Greenwich Village, and they thought it was perhaps just a really badly botched robbery. It felt some photography equipment had been taken, but it felt odd. And then it was found out that Ronald Sisman may have had a side job of dealing some drugs, and they thought, okay, maybe some of the bigger drug guys in Greenwich Village were pissed off that this, guy with the photography business is cutting into their profits. It was like, there's a couple of things that happened. Ronald Sisman was accused of drugging a model during a photo shoot in 1980, and there was really no evidence, so that was dismissed. But it was like, this just could have been a really bad robbery. It could have been retaliation from, higher up drug people, but they were beaten and then shot, beaten badly. Like maybe where's the stuff? Where's the money? That's the stuff you do before you kill someone, that kind of thing. So there were, there's a lot of theories, but nothing was ever nailed down. And by the way, this case is still unsolved. So it takes a weird turn when a prison informant says, you know what, another inmate told me about this case 2 weeks before it happened.
Wait, what?
Right. So, it's like the New York Times says the apartment's really ransacked and the killer was in search of something, is what the New York Times says. And it's like, well, I don't really know. I don't think that that's really what happened. So this inmate says, my cellie isn't just like John Smith. My cellie is David Berkowitz.
Oh, wait. Okay. I go ahead.
So David Berkowitz says to this informant, 2 weeks from now on Halloween, he names the date, a couple, and he says Manhattan, but their apartment's in Greenwich Village, but it could sort of be considered in the area. A couple is going to be beaten and shot in the back of the head, and their place is going to be ransacked. And it has to do with the satanic cult that I'm involved in. That dog that talked to me and told me to kill those people.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh, man.
So 2 weeks before it happened, David Berkowitz describes what's going to happen on Halloween in Ronald Sisman's apartment. Doesn't have names, but says it's a man and a woman, a couple. They're going to be beaten. They're going to be shot execution style. And they're going to try and make it look like a drug thing or a robbery. But it's actually, it's an execution because Ronald Sisman accidentally took some video and photographic images of a ritualistic killing and that we did in our satanic cult. And if he is nabbed for his small-time drug dealing, he may use that to get out of doing time, and we can't have that, so we need to eliminate him.
Wow.
Yes.
Now, this is a guy that's saying that Berkowitz told him this.
Yep, 2 weeks before it happened.
So he could just be making it up, but...
Well, the thing that's very fascinating, and it's, obviously people much smarter than I who have much more access to this information have discounted it. After it was actually reopened again in 1996, saying, look, we need to really investigate the satanic part, and we need to find out if the Sisman Platzman murder is involved. And they have always said there's many conspiracies that David Berkowitz was actually involved in this satanic cult, and the two sons of the man, Sam Carr, who owned Harvey, the dog that spoke to David Berkowitz and told him to kill people. The two sons of Sam Carr and David Berkowitz sort of considered himself a son of Sam, that they were in this satanic cult together, and that they, Satan, or the dog who spoke, Satan who spoke through the dog, wanted the blood of young women, and that's why he did what he did. Many profilers have said he was a lone wolf. He did this alone. He was there's never any evidence that he was involved in any sort of satanic cult, that Sam Carr's sons were involved in any, that the dog could talk, where someone could understand the dog saying, "Hey, David, would you go kill some chicks for me?"
What the voice sounded
and do
like.
You have a milk bone? I don't know. I'm trying to imagine what Harvey would sound like. So, but he described the apartment in detail 2 weeks before it happened. He described it in detail. He had great detail on the Sisman Platzman apartment, but they just can't find any evidence. So this case is still unsolved. And obviously, if you know anything about this murders, you will hopefully let the NYPD know. But it gets a little more, not a little more, it gets a lot more layered from here. So it was 1977 when David Berkowitz was finally convicted of killing 6 people, and injuring 7 more. Many things were very similar to the Golden State Killer and the Zodiac Killer. He preyed on couples. He wrote odd notes to law enforcement, to journalists, to publications. Really kind of weird. Not kind of. It was extraordinarily weird. So he, the entire time said that, that he was being told to do this. He was smart, but as a profile was developed, it was really borne out that he would be a loner who wrote obsessively in journals, which of course those were found in his apartment, and that he would have a low-paying job way beneath him. And now when he was arrested in 1977, he was a letter sorter for the U.S. Postal Department. And that's one of those things that lends itself to that term, civil servants going postal. He's one of the reasons that became a thing to say, because he had low-paying jobs his whole life, even though he was very smart. But a loner. We can go back and forth whether the fact that he was adopted, that his parents, who adopted him, tried to make things good for him, and his mother died at the age of, when he was 14, of breast cancer. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. I just never like to blame, nurture. I like to blame the person who does this. So I just like to blame him, not the woman. He ended up finding his biological mother. They stayed in contact for a while, but then fell out again. He still kept in contact with his biological sister. Again, his, adoptive parents did the best they could. So back to David. he's, taken into custody in 1977. So his reign of terror wasn't that long, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty awful. He was known by a lot of different things besides the Son of Sam. That was because of the letters he wrote, but he was known as the 44 caliber killer. So he pled guilty immediately. Another one of the things the profile brought forward, that he would probably be the guy who would want to take credit for all of his things. It was a 44 caliber bulldog revolver. So he killed 6 people and wounded 7 people by July of 1977. He's taken into custody in August of 1977. It was just really like 76 to 77. It was a short killing spree, but it terrorized New York. If you were alive then, or had access to any publications, you would know it was the biggest manhunt in the history of New York. And then he kept leaving these letters for NYPD homicide detectives. He moved to Yonkers, so he'd be right outside of the New York City limits. And one of the things that makes me giggle is that he was really brought down by a woman walking her dog who saw a strange guy and saw his car being ticketed. And she waited 4 days before she reported it. She ran into her apartment with her dog and heard gunshots following her. Wasn't sure it was related, but called finally NYPD. They went through every car that was ticketed on the street, on that street, Pine Street, I believe, and found his Galaxy. Now, he had already been on the radar. He had parked in front of a fire hydrant. That wasn't why he was on the radar. He got a ticket for parking in front of the fire hydrant, I guess August 6th of 77. So he's taken into custody August 10th. He'd already been on the NYPD's radar because they had sort of nailed it down that he may have been responsible for many arson events around the city. Now, they had him tied to potentially 100 arsons. Now, he admitted to 1,400. I don't know that that's true.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was already on the radar, but this wonderful dog walker, she has a very unusual name. Let me find that. It's like Casilla, Cacillia, Cacilia Davis. She's walking her dog, and it happened to be near the scene of a double shooting. And she sees that this car's getting a ticket in front of a fire hydrant. And as soon as the cop who writes the ticket leaves, a man walks past her and walks past the car. And he looked at her and he looked at his car. And she was like, something's weird. Something's weird about this guy. And then she sees there's something in his hand and it's dark. So she runs to her house with her dog and hears some shots fired behind her. But she says, I wasn't sure that was what he had in his hand. I wasn't sure he was shooting at me. You hear gunshots all the time. I don't know, what it was for sure. But she waits for 4 days and then calls the police and says, look, this weird guy, was walking past me and he had something in his hand and his car got ticketed. And they're like, aha. So they find that it was his 1970 yellow Ford Galaxy. That's what got him in trouble, which makes me laugh really hard.
Yeah, any yellow car.
Well, a yellow Ford Galaxy, I don't know. So he, is a very, David Berkowitz is a very prolific writer. And what is so fascinating is how involved law enforcement gets in his writings, in his letters to them, in the way he writes and the way he speaks. There was at one point they thought that he was from Ireland or from Scotland because he would write misspellings that were Scottish, like, ooh, my heart, it hurts. But it was, ooh, my hurt, my H-E-R-T hoots, H-O-O-T-S. So it's, ooh, my hurt hoots. So it's like my heart hurts, but it's more of a Scottish accent. Then they thought these were handwritten letters. They weren't typed. They thought this person works in a printing company or as a calligrapher. They investigated so many people in New York for these letters because he wrote in different styles, which, he could probably, a good defense attorney could say, well, he had many personalities and he's not responsible for this, blah, 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 blah. So the only person who's ever been, charged with the shootings is David Berkowitz. But there are some law enforcement and some journalists who feel like he could not have done this alone. There's too many descriptions, too many cars. But, those things are very prevalent, hindsight being 2020, in cases like the Golden State Killer. There are probably still people that think Joseph James D'Angelo killed, a couple of people and other people killed everyone else. Joseph James D'Angelo was tall, short, thin, stocky, mustache, no mustache, dark hair, light hair, blue eyes, black eyes. Some things we can explain now, and Joseph James D'Angelo's numerous cars, or the cars that were used at the allegedly by Joseph James D'Angelo. He had access to different cars. Eyewitness reports end up being the least valuable piece of evidence. And you like to think you remember. Our subconscious mind, if you're involved in some sort of trauma, will probably allow you to process certain things, sights, smells, hearing. But some things are probably, your mind is going to try to save you from reliving things. And you are going to think that he looks one way, behaves one way. It's so there's really no clear-cut evidence that there was anyone other than David Berkowitz. Now, he admitted to a couple of the murders, but not all of them. He's also changed his story over the years. He admits that he committed his first attack on Christmas Eve of 1975. Now, those two women survived. One woman has never been identified. One woman was a teenager. She wasn't really identified by the police, but she's a teenager named Michelle Foreman, and she ended up in the hospital. That's why we know who she was. So right after that, and he was never suspected of those. He admitted those. But so much like Joseph James D'Angelo, he changed MOs. So he started his first attacks on women with knives, and they didn't die, and he didn't know what he was doing. So he moves into 1976, and he develops the gun theory, the way Joseph James D'Angelo would change his MO from, allegedly, from ransacking to raping to bludgeon to shooting. I mean, there's just no one size fits all when it comes to a warped mind. There's no one size fits all. They can have specific details that they like to stick to, but it doesn't mean they're not ever going to change or develop. It's the fascinating part to me is the brain, what makes the person's brain do this. But so his first letter, badly written, misspelled, bizarre. His second letter, he sent to Jimmy Breslin, who was a columnist for the Daily News. And it arrives back when the mail was really good. It arrives on May 30th, and it was postmarked from Englewood, New Jersey on the same day. So the Daily News receives this letter. It's neatly hand-printed, and it's all precisely in the middle. And on the back of the envelope, the words blood and family, darkness and death, absolute depravity, .44. So they realize it's from the .44 caliber shooter. And in David Berkowitz's own words, hello from the gutters of NYC, which are filled with dog manure, vomit, stale wine, urine, and blood. Hello from the sewers of NYC, which swallow up these delicacies when they are washed away by the sweeper trucks. Hello from the cracks in the sidewalks of NYC, and from the ants that dwell in these cracks and feed in the dried blood of the dead that is settled into the cracks. Jimmy Breslin, I'm dropping you a line to let you know that I appreciate your interest in those recent and horrendous .44 caliber killings. I also want you to know that I read your column daily and I find it quite informative. So tell me, Jim, what will you have for July 29th? Now, July 29th of 1977 is the 1-year anniversary of his first killings of July 29th of 1976. So they knew immediately who that was from. You can forget about me if you like, because I don't like publicity. However, you must not forget Donna Loria. That's one of the victims. And you cannot let the people forget her either. She was a very, very sweet girl, but Sam's a thirsty lad, and he won't let me stop killing until he gets his fill of blood. Mr. Breslin, sir, don't think that because you haven't heard from me in a while that I went to sleep. No, no. Rather, I'm still here, like a spirit roaming the night, thirsty, hungry, seldom stopping to rest, anxious to please Sam. I love my work. Now the void has been filled. Perhaps we shall meet face to face someday, or perhaps I'll be blown away by cops with smoking .38 calibers. Whatever. If I shall be fortunate enough to meet you, I will tell you all about Sam if you like, and I will introduce you to him. His name is Sam the Terrible. Not knowing what the future holds, I shall say farewell, and I will see you at the next job. Or should I say, you will see my handiwork at the next job. Remember Ms. Loria, and thank you. In their blood from the gutter, Sam's creation, .44 caliber here, are some names to help you along. Forward them to the inspector for use by NCIC. So he lists names like the Duke of Death, the Wicked King Wicker, the 22 Disciples of Hell, John Wheaties, rapist and suffocator of young girls, and P.S. Please inform all the detectives working the slaying to remain. P.S. Jimmy Breslin, please inform all the detectives working the case that I wish them the best of luck. Keep on digging. Drive on. Think positive. Get off your butts. Knock on coffins. Upon my capture, I promise to buy all the guys working in the case a new pair of shoes if I can save up the money. Son of Sam.
I've never heard that letter. I knew about it. That is just made the hair on my back stand up.
It's really, and of course they analyze it with, every microscope and fine-tooth comb they can find. I'm just struck by, I'll buy them all a new pair of shoes, because I don't know how many times we have said on this podcast, it takes a village to solve a case. Absolutely, for sure. But the thing that solves most cases is just good old-fashioned shoe leather. So maybe he felt like that detectives were wearing out their shoe leather, trying to find out, who this person was. So, of course, Jimmy Breslin turns it right over to the police. They think, this letter is more sophisticated in its wording and its presentation compared to the first letter, which was almost, unreadable in its weirdness. They think that it probably came from someone with some knowledge of the shootings. They think it's someone who's got, expertise in printing, calligraphy, graphic design. And then they settle on the fact that the person who wrote it was a comic letterer. So they end up questioning the staff of DC Comics.
Oh my God, I hadn't heard that either.
Yeah.
Wow.
They end up questioning the staff of DC Comics in New York City. Do you recognize this lettering? Does anyone here write like this? Now, an aside to this already twisted tale, and there's more. The Wicked King Wicker, one of the names he lists, they think that this may have a reference to a 1973 horror film called The Wicker Man. Now, I worked for a film company, a French film company, Lumiere Films, and we had the rights to this awful 70s British done film. It was part of the Hammer collection, The Wicker Man. And they redid it recently, not that recently, it's probably been 10 years or so, with Nicolas Cage. Even worse. If you're a pagan and you feel like that, men should be used to propagate the population by fertile women at a certain time of year, you might really like this film. I'm going to guess you're not. There's a couple of songs. It's really bad. It's like, it's bad 1970s softcore porn. It's like softcore poor. It doesn't even deserve the N.
Yeah. Doesn't have the N.
Yeah, it doesn't have the N. It's Christopher Lee is in it, one of my favorite actors in the universe, the best, vampire, second only to Bela Lugosi in the world. Just it's an awful film. It's got a cult following because of its awfulness, but they actually had a private screening for the NYPD of The Wicker Man. It's like they probably left there more traumatized than having to work on the Son of Sam case. I'm telling you, it's that bad. So we know that David Berkowitz held New York City in fear for a couple of years, which is pretty hard to do. But he had a penchant for women with long dark hair, and so many women in New York cut their hair, curled it, dyed it lighter colors, so much so that beauty supply places couldn't keep dye in, and they could not meet the demand for wigs, which is just the thought of that is just that sort of terror. That's what these people are. They're cowards who love causing terror. They're terrorists. They're homegrown terrorists. So even though David Berkowitz said, I have this cult that makes me do these things, journalist John Hockenberry said, I don't know. It's tough for me to imagine that he did this all by himself. Queens District Attorney John Santucci, even one of the police investigators, Mike Novotny, were like, I don't know. It seems to me that, there's a lot of discrepancies in statements from witnesses, even from surviving victims. I can't imagine he acted alone. There were 3 to 5 different suspect cars, 5 different suspect descriptions, different heights, different shapes. Somebody else had to be there. But it really was just him. It was really just him. So this case has, captivated especially the United States for a very long time. And John Hockenberry, he found that even Dateline would broadcast his theories. They gave it a lot of exposure. He discusses with another journalist, Maury Terry, about investigating the Son of Sam shootings, and saying that I'm going to challenge the fact that this is a lone gunman. It's Maury Terry collects a lot of information so he can write a book called The Ultimate Evil. He has a second expanded that came out in 1987. He has a second expanded edition that came out in 1999, and he sort of focuses on what could be accomplices in this satanic cult. And the police took him so seriously that they reopened the case, the Yonkers police, which is where he lived, in 1996. But they really couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything, that connected him to the Sisman and Platzman murders, that connected him to any sort of a satanic cult. He was always thought of as a loner. It's tough to imagine that it's really anyone but him. And you would think that by now something would have come out. It's so fascinating, the number of satanic cases that have been reported. It's like, oh my God, they're kidnapping babies and eating them, and none of this has ever. I think people just get bored in small towns. They're just like, none of this has ever been proven. That there's anyone other than usually one asshole person. So one more deviation here. From prison, David Berkowitz sends a letter to a police department in North Dakota and says, Arlis Perry, it's all in capitals, Arlis Perry, hunted, stalked, and slain. She was followed to California and Stanford University. Now, bringing it all home, Arlis Perry, her case was solved a few months ago with DNA, and it is one of those things that is just, it's heartbreaking. So Arlis Perry marries Bruce Perry, and he is a sophomore at Stanford. Arlis is 19. She's beautiful. They live in campus housing. They're religious. She's a student. She's, beautiful. It's a heartbreaking case. And it was one of those long-standing things that it was like, when is this going to be? When can this be solved? When can this ever be solved? So Arlis followed her husband, Bruce Perry, to Stanford University in August of 1974. October 12th, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. October 12th, 1974. They're walking back to their apartment, and they get into a tiff. And Bruce goes home, and Arlis goes to the chapel to pray. 11:30 p.m. She doesn't come back. At 3 a.m, Bruce notifies Stanford campus police. They go and check out the chapel, and it's locked up. And they look around, can't find her, don't know why they can't get in, but they can't get in. At 5:30 a.m., Stephen Blake Crawford, who was the caretaker of the chapel, calls the Stanford campus police and says, and his exact quote is, "We've got a stiff here." So they show up and find Arlis Perry in front of the altar on the floor, naked from the waist down. One arm behind her, one arm above her head, legs completely splayed apart. She'd been stabbed in the back of the head with an ice pick. She had been raped and also raped with a candle. And a candle had been shoved so hard that it penetrated her chest.
Jesus Christ.
Her husband is, considered a suspect, and he lived under that for quite a long time. He has moved on with his life and works on children's health issues. Seems like a wonderful man. So the caretaker of the chapel who found her, Stephen Blake Crawford, he was a U.S. Air Force vet, and he worked for Stanford Public Safety in 1971 as a police officer, and he got to carry a gun. In 1972, there's a new police chief who thinks, I'm not sure that the Stanford Police Department looked closely enough at these people, and I don't know that they should all be qualified to carry guns. So they're all asked to reapply for their positions, and literally 75% of the force do not make the cut. They are not allowed to carry guns, and then they're offered options to become security guards. So Stephen Crawford becomes a caretaker / security guard for the chapel. He was furious. He complained quite a bit. He told his friends, I can't believe they're doing this to me. And he worked at Stanford until 1976. But he enacted not only the murder of Arlis Perry, which we don't find out until, I believe it's June or July of 2018, where he's connected with DNA. He did terrible things. He stole stuff from offices. He stole from the science department a skull. He stole a walking cane that was given to Leland Stanford, the founder, and stole some of Leland Stanford's rare books. The worst thing he did besides that is he went to the print shop and got a degree, gave himself a degree from Stanford, because at Stanford, he used a blank diploma.
Oh my God.
So he's eventually arrested, and he said, I'm just mad at the university, and the police department treated me badly. So he gets a 6-month suspended sentence. A 6 motherfucking month suspended sentence. So, the police are at first pursuing the theory that Arlis Perry is committed by some random crazy intruder at the church. But the length of time that was spent, murdering her had to take some time. And the detectives were like, more experienced homicide detectives were like, look, it's somebody who's familiar with this memorial church and its schedule. So they bring in an FBI profiler, and he said, the murderer is between 17 and 22 years old. He keeps a detailed diary, and he took a trophy. And I'll be darned if Arlis Perry's glasses are not missing. This case, they wanted to solve it so badly, they even tried to connect it to other serial killers like Ted Bundy. And they found that Ted Bundy he had an alibi for this one. He was gassing up his car and he was out of the area. He could not have done this.
Yeah, gassing up to go kill somebody else. Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
But not Arlis Perry. He was gassing up to, go to Utah or Florida or kill some nurses. But no, he sure didn't kill Arlis Perry. So Stephen Blake Crawford is such a weirdo and a loner. He belonged to a group where he lied so much that they gave him the nickname of the Prevaricator. So in June of this year, June 28th of 2018, 72-year-old Stephen Blake Crawford is at home in his creepy little apartment. He was a loner his whole life, and neighbors were like, yeah, he never, seemed loud. He would wave, wasn't friendly, but, that's what neighbors do. You just wave when you're passing in the hallway or whatever. And the police are closing in on him because DNA has linked him definitively. He left some semen on her clothing and a palm print on one of the candles that he used to assault her with. And they're closing in on him. They knock on the door. They actually open the door, and he's sitting there with a pistol. They back away, and within a few minutes, they hear one gunshot. They then go in, and it's still considered an officer-involved shooting, and there's still investigation going on. It's just been a couple of months now. But, it's a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He killed himself, didn't have time to leave a note or say what he did, but he knows what he did. And the investigators are saying, I don't think Arlis Perry was even an intended victim. He was such a monster and so angry at Stanford, but she's the one that paid the terrible price. So we start in 1980 in New York, a Halloween murder that's unsolved. We end up with the son of Sam and another case that the son of Sam says he knows what happened when he didn't. She wasn't followed to Stanford and stalked. She was just an unfortunate, beautiful soul who went into the memorial church at Stanford University to talk to God and pray when she had a fight with her new husband. And a monster who was the caretaker and security guard for the memorial church preyed on her because he couldn't take a brick out of the church and make someone hurt. So he had to make someone else hurt. So that is the beginning and the end of this Halloween edition of Just the Tip-Sters. And if you happen to have been in New York in the early 80s and know anything about Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman, minus David Berkowitz, please call the NYPD. Please call us, email us, and more cowbell.
And remember, our number is 832-TIPSTER, 832-847-7837. And the email address is jttipsters@gmail.com. Melissa, would you like a Snickers in your Halloween bag?
Boo!